Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. People storming in. Handle that. I'll keep an eye on that. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to, I guess, the second of what we hope to be a regular series of small, informal webinars presented by EuropeanaTech. And we will be covering all different areas that are relevant to EuropeanaTech. Last week, we had a presentation on audiovisual digitization, preservation, and the copyright headaches that come along with that. Next week, we'll have a webinar again on heritage acoustics and archaeoacoustics. The week after that, we'll have another webinar again on heritage acoustics and archaeoacoustics. So keep an eye out for those. But today, I am very happy to welcome Peter Kraker, or Peter Kraker. I don't know how you like me to pronounce it, or with which accent I should do it with.
Both were perfect.
Yeah. Peter is the founder and chairman of Open Knowledge Maps, and we'll find out, or he will assess very soon, how many of you are familiar with the work that Open Knowledge Maps are doing. And in this presentation, we're going to learn about the service and the tools that Open Knowledge Maps providers that allow researchers, students, and practitioners to identify relevant resources in a more meaningful, streamlined, and just just an entirely improved way of going about doing it, because I'm sure many of us are familiar with having to scour or search or trudge through different databases or resources that don't provide information or knowledge in a structured or easily accessible or easily understandable way. And with that, please save questions for the chat, and we'll also be able to open up for questions after Peter has finished his presentation. And so thank you all for joining, and over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for the kind introduction and for the invitation to speak to you all. Today, I'm going to share my slides with you right now. I'd also like to mention that this is a talk that was co-created with my Open Knowledge Maps colleague, Maxi Schrank. So Open Knowledge Maps is visual discovery for everyone. But to get us started and also to calibrate my talk, I'd like to ask you to go to Slido and just let me know if you've already used Open Knowledge Maps. Let's take a look at the screen. So here you still have the information. The code is 443305. And you can also see the QR code on the screen. We can see people coming in, people voting. Thanks for providing your vote. It will help me to give you an idea of what, how many of you have already interacted with our tool and how much basic information I should give you. Okay, I can see that 10 people have already voted. At the moment, it's 100% no, which is fine. We're mostly working in the research context, so I think there are a lot of applications in the cultural heritage context. So let's see and find out if there are indeed any. But yeah, thanks. No one answered maybe. Usually there's at least one person who goes maybe, which is then always quite curious, but I think there's so many tools floating around that people at this point may be not always sure if they have used something or not. But in any case, let's thank you very much for giving me this sign. I will then be maybe spend a little bit more on the foundations and the basics of Open Knowledge Map, but there will be, I think, also some time for discussion afterwards on the more maybe advanced stuff. All right. So going back to my slides, I want to start off with the motivation for this talk, and I think Greg has already hinted at it, and I think it's also very summed up in this nice piece of remix art, I would say. There is just too much outputs stuff out there, so that we cannot get an overview of research topics anymore. Once we have them, it's difficult to keep them. And it's of course not just the COVID pandemic, and it's not just scientific articles. It's all kinds of academic knowledge, whether that is publications, research data, whether it is audiovisual material, software. There are a lot of artifacts published these days, and I think a lot of you are working towards publishing a lot of this content. But on the other hand, it makes it very hard to then kind of keep this overview and reuse this material afterwards, because it's often difficult to find. So I think that's one of the base motivations. And the other one is that lists like this one, they are very helpful, but they cannot cover all use cases or discovery use cases anymore. In particular, a list like this is not a tool to get an overview of 200,000 results. And I think this is exemplified also by qualitative research. So this is research looking into data discovery workflows, and there is one quote from 2016 where researcher says, well, it involves making phone calls, right, and figuring out where I can find the information that I need to answer that particular question. That was 2016. In 2020, there is a quote, I just searched for keywords in Google, but it is not very effective. I can't remember a single instance when I found something useful. So I think all of these things combined were the motivation to start open knowledge maps. And in sort of the basic foundations, we're a charitable non-profit organization headquartered in Vienna, Austria, and we're dedicated to dramatically improving the visibility of scientific knowledge, on the one hand for science itself, but also for all the other stakeholders in society who have often a much harder way into science, into academic research. And our idea is now to use knowledge maps for discovery. And knowledge maps actually have been around for a long time. I also looked on Europeana, and I found this knowledge map from 1818. It's from Bavaria, so it's in German. This one's very much for illustrative purposes, I would say. We have in the middle the philosopher's island. This is surrounded by the sea of ignorance, but don't worry, up here is also the land of enlightenment. So I think this idea to kind of explore knowledge in a spatial way, or at least to depict it, is quite old. But in sort of our interpretation of a knowledge map, it's something like this. So you have a topic like heart diseases, and then you have relevant subtopics already at a glance. So already an advantage over a list-based view in that you have here risk factors, types of diseases and prevention. So you have these subtopics, and then you also have resources attached to each of these subtopics, so you can get immediately started. And the closeness of these bubbles also says something about the subject similarity. So in this case, risk factors is subject-wise closer to types of diseases than it is to prevention. From the theory to the practice, if you go to our website, openknowledgemaps.org, you can create a knowledge map of your own. At the moment, we have integrated two main databases. One is PubMed, big database in the life sciences, and then also the Bielefeld Academic Search Engine, or BASE, which aggregates over 350 million academic outputs. So you can really search in any discipline. I took digital education as an example. And as you can see, what we produced looks very similar to the image that I showed you before, and that these bubbles are subtopics such as digital technologies, digital libraries, or down here, digital competence. And once you found an area that you're interested in, let's say it's this one down here on the digital transformation, you can then zoom into it. You can take a look at the research sources that are related to this area, and of course, inspect the metadata. But if it's an open access document, you can also view it within the same interface. So this is kind of the basic functionality. The advantages that we see is that you can get this bird's eye view of a field, something which is very difficult to get with other means. You can identify relevant concepts, which is often a very difficult step in the discovery process. What are the words that you're actually looking for, apart from maybe the one or two general terms that you're starting your search with? You can sort the relevant from the irrelevant depending on your information need. So if you're only interested in digital technologies, you can stay within that bubble and then maybe branch out later to something like digital transformation. And finally, Open Knowledge Maps is an interface over all scientific knowledge, so both open and closed. But we will always make it very easy to find the open content and to access it. Yeah, how does it work? So for each search, we connect to either Base or PubMed, and we request the most relevant documents. Relevance in that case means the similarity between your query and the document metadata. And then we pull everything onto our servers. We operate an AI pipeline that creates the knowledge map, and it's based on natural language processing methods to aggregate and display the publication according to similarity in topics. In more detail, so once we have the API result, then there's a lot of pre-processing, cleaning. There is a live duplication algorithm that's running. We're also trying to infer missing subjects. So if we don't get, for example, keywords, then we try to infer them from the rest of the metadata. And then we create a big coword occurrence matrix. A matrix that shows how many words two documents have in common. And that is then the input for the clustering and the layout algorithm. And then we also operate a cluster labeling algorithm that applies the TF-IDF algorithm on the keywords. So we're looking for those keywords that occur very often within the cluster, but seldom in the other clusters. And on the client, then there's also a course-directed layout algorithm to put everything into place and make sure not everything is overlapping each other. So this is, I would say, the AI or machine learning part. But of course, there's also a lot of cognitive science involved. Visualization has a lot of cognitive aspects we need to take into account. So for example, the cognitive load, we can only handle so many items at the same time. So we always try to restrict the number of elements in each view in order not to overload the working memory. We also take change blindness into account, and change blindness says that at the end of an animation, you don't know how the scene looked like at the beginning of the animation. And that, of course, spells trouble for any zooming in and out. So we use animations only when they're necessary and always try to provide ample context for orientation. And finally, recognition. It's much easier for us to understand something new if we recognize the things that we see. So we always try to use well-known metaphors or real-world representations. And that's why in Open Knowledge Maps, a paper looks like the icon of a paper and is not just another circle. yeah, with this approach, we've become the largest visual search engine for research. Over 2 million knowledge maps have been created on our platform. If you look a little bit closely, there is an interesting time here around September 2021, when we go from steady growth to exponential growth. This is a very interesting time, also infrastructure-wise, where we've put in a lot of things in order to keep up with that growth, distributing the backend, distributed databases and things like that. But of course, it's amazing to see this kind of adoption and use of our service. Over 100,000 monthly visits on our website in over 200 countries and territories. So it's really a worldwide thing at this point. Yeah, we're an open infrastructure in the strictest sense of the word. So this means all of our services are free and open. You've already seen the integrations for Base and PubMed. There's also an open air integration, giving you an overview of research projects. We also have institutional integration. So this is something that I will touch upon a little bit later. But of course, all of our training materials, of our software, of our content and data, they are under an open license and can thus be reused. And you can even set up open knowledge maps yourself if you wanted to. Yeah, if you give everything away for free, how do you finance that? That's something that fills most of my days. One answer to this question is, of course, projects. So we've been involved in many of them. One of them which just ended is the Triple Project, which is a multilingual discovery platform for the social sciences and the humanities. And here we work together with a large consortium led by the Operas group. And I will show you the outcome a little bit later on. One project that's still running is with the Freie Universität Berlin, where we're working on an atlas for biological invasion science, so invasive species. And we've also been involved in digitization projects. This is something I think that's also very close now to where you're coming from. We've been working on making the first half century of knowledge production at the Austrian Academy of Sciences more visible and more discoverable. And I will also show you that actually at the very end, the outcome of this project. Yeah, so maybe back to the funding engine. One part is projects, and the other part is then something that I think should be very much tied to how an organization operates. And for us, it's important to have a participatory approach and to really feel the words community owned and community driven with life. So we have, as I said, open licenses for content, data, and source code. So there's no IP that's proprietary to open knowledge maps, which makes it community owned. And we've also made it community driven by giving away the control of the technical roadmap. And 1/3 of the technical roadmap is now done by the supporting members, or decided by the supporting members. The second third is by the wider community, and only the last third stays with open knowledge maps. And with that, we really hope to reach this equitable balancing of stakeholder needs. And for us, a precursor to community-based funding. So supporting members has already been on that slide. That's the second part of the puzzle. So we have already 28 supporting members on board and counting. And these are organizations at the moment. There's still a strong focus on German-speaking Europe, but we're expanding beyond that to Finland, to Belgium, to the UK, to the US. And course, we do have a lot of universities, but there are also national libraries on board. There are publishers on board. There are library networks on board. There are funding organizations on board. So I think we can see that discovery is really a very broad subject with a lot of different stakeholders in the system. Yeah, and then the last bit, this easy integration in the community infrastructure. I think this is really where the circle closes. And this is sort of the last bit that I would like to present now. And I think where we may also find more collaboration, potential points of interaction with you in the cultural heritage space. So the custom services is an idea that came from our supporting members, and they allow you now to embed open knowledge map services in your own discovery systems and any other system that you have. They are available as cloud components, so there is a hosted platform where you can access them, and they are co-created with our supporting members and the community. I'd like to give you an example, and let's make it actually a live example. We're going now to switch over to the Go Triple platform, which is the outcome of the aforementioned Triple project. And it's the European Hub for the Social Sciences and the Humanities, where you can now discover over 13 million documents, over 22,000 projects, and almost 15 million researcher profiles from the SSH. You can then type in the topic of interest, and let's again use digital education as an example. And what the platform will give you is a list-based interface with all the different facets, but it will also allow you to now create a knowledge map. And the knowledge map is then created within the same interface. So it's now integrated here in the Go Triple platform. And it's now also based on the Go Triple data. And of course, that makes a big difference in the image that we see. I think it's a very SSH-driven image now. It's now about teacher education, storytelling, inclusivity, and so on. And of course, you can then interact with the map as you would with the one on our website. And I think it's a really nice way of also introducing users to the content of the platform and what they can expect from this platform. All right, so this is one integration. Another integration that I wanted to show you is with the Austrian Social Science Data Archive. So this is the Austrian Assessor node, and here they've integrated our search box component. Let's maybe go to the large view, and this enables you to integrate the whole search flow within your own service. You can then again type in a topic. Let's take labor as an example. And this now again is based on the contents of the Austrian Social Science Data Archive, as we can see here. And I think especially if you go beyond publications, right? Or let's say things that have a very useful title, and with research data, I think we're already there. You have these kind of words that keep repeating, like microsensors. So it might be, you know, a data set from a same larger file set. You have maybe panel studies that repeat every year. So if you're only going through the titles, it's very hard to parse for a human and to understand what is actually going on here. But if you look at the knowledge map on the left-hand side, I think it's very easy to understand which topics are being covered here and what you can find in the Austrian Social Science Data Archive. You can then, of course, zoom in again, look at different data set, and then also to kind of close the circle, go back to the landing page of an individual data set. Yeah, that's the basic idea behind the custom services with two use cases. In terms of the technical setup, at the moment, the idea is that institutions and platforms, they send their data to one of our aggregators, so either based PubMed or OpenAir. And at this point, they already have access to it through Open Knowledge Maps, and then can pull these custom services components off the shelf with defined APIs, a lot of documentation behind them. Use cases are, of course, manifold. As we can see, you can complement existing discovery systems. You can also make the contents of a specific collection more visible, like a research data management system. For us, it's also important to go beyond the publication. We cover at the moment 25 output types via base. That includes things like audiovisual content, like sounds, like presentations, like cultural artifacts. So it's really very broad. And I think we really need this to lift what is almost an invisible veil at the moment over these resources. And I think Europeana is doing an awesome job in making this content more visible and bringing it together. So maybe there's a way to work together on this. Yeah, and finally, you can of course also integrate Open Knowledge Maps components in other areas of your digital services. That could be a news page, that could be a research collection, or a current research information system. There are a lot of integrations in library catalogs. The first one was at the ETH library. So every search at the ETH library can now also be sent to Open Knowledge Maps. And that was very inspiring to many of our partners. So it's now also, for example, integrated at the TUV, University of Vienna, University of Eastern Finland. Here, I wanted to show you one more live example. Let's go back to the browser, because in TUV, you can also create a new visualization type, which we've been working on, especially in the past few years, which is a timeline view or a stream graph. And here you can see the related keywords and how they change over time in occurrence in related artifacts. And on the x-axis you have time, then you have these streams. And this is also to bring out trends and changes. For example, circular economy is something that came up in terms also of plastic waste and reducing plastic waste, and you can see it here as a stream, and then you can again click on it and see the resources that are related to it. Yeah, that's the string graph integration, and then I want to give you also a sort of idea of how it could work as a representation mechanism. This is from the Universität de Lausanne. They have created these nice representations of their core research topics, where they've put text, videos, people that you can talk to, news articles, but they also wanted to represent the contents of their repository and the actual research. But they thought just having a list would be like a media break, and so they decided to do this with the knowledge map. And here you can see that we also allow for very sophisticated queries, and this now gives an overview of digital humanities at UNIL, and also gives you an idea of how we work with different languages, because in open knowledge maps from the beginning it was very important for us to not focus on specific languages, but to allow all languages and then optimize them one by one. And a lot of that has also happened within Triple project. Yeah, and then bringing it all together, and also again maybe coming even closer to the cultural heritage context. This is the Linked Cat Plus project, which I've also mentioned before. This is a project that we did together with the Austrian Academy of Sciences, which was established in 1847 as a learned society in the tradition of institutions such as the Royal Society in England or the Académie des Sciences in France. It's been an important place for knowledge production for over 150 years. For example, Erwin Schrödinger gave his first speech at the Austrian Academy of Sciences. Christian Doppler defended the Doppler effect against Joseph Petzval. And these were fierce debates that were held there. And Joseph Hammer-Burgstaller was the first president of the Austrian Academy of Sciences and a contributor from the beginning. And so there are a lot of proceedings from these meetings. This is how they look like, the Sitzungsberichte. And the problem at the beginning of the project was that the proceedings are often requested, but they are not systematically digitized. You had to go to the library itself to access them. And so the objective of the project was to make the proceedings accessible, discoverable, and reusable, and doing so as linked open data and provide feature-rich visual exploration and open access to the full text. So this is basically what we set out to do, and I'm going to show you the result of the project. Switching back again to the browser. I also need to switch back to the browser here. So hopefully you can see the Linked Cat project now. Unfortunately, everything's in German, so I'm going to translate. But essentially, you can now discover the proceedings from 1847 to 1918. So over 9,000 individual documents or parts of the proceeding have been cataloged. And you can do a regular search with the keyword. But thanks to the great metadata, we can now also look at authors. So, for example, you can look at a stream graph. I already mentioned the first president of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, Joseph Hammer-Burgstaller. And I think this gives a nice overview of the main streams or main topics he worked on. Of course, something like the Arabic language. He worked on this throughout his life, but mostly it seems around 1849. And of course, also on the history. This is a topic he worked on throughout his life, but with two major sort of high points. And then there are things where he worked on it sort of only in a specific amount of time, like for example on these two scholars that he researched, but also he wrote about the Khamer and the cultural and historic significance of the Khamer. Yeah, so this is how a stream graph for an individual person looks like. So we're also pulling here the images from Wikidata, for example, it's linked to the GND here, so you can also see it in the GND or see this person in the GND catalog. And you can also, and this is a new thing that something we're working towards, is to also present a more structured approach that comes from the top. So, for example, we were able to show the disciplines or themes according to the basic classification. So you can really go from the top. So you could, for example, go down here and look at language and literature, and then look at the topic of dialectology, and then it would bring up kind of the knowledge map. So that's one way of kind of also coming in from a classification and yeah, putting that together with the classification that we already have. And then here we can see the different types of dialects that they looked at in the different areas. Yeah, I think, and now moving back to the presentation. I think that's everything I wanted to show you from LinkTech Plus. And now maybe let's go back to Slido. And now I'd like to kind of kickstart the discussion maybe a little bit. Now I'd like to learn from you. What application integration scenarios do you see for open knowledge maps in Europeana or in cultural heritage in general? So yeah, if you have ideas, please put them in. Right now, I can already see two participants that are typing. One dropped out, now back. Excellent. I can see content selection for teaching. Okay. I'd like to see if it's possible to use this for schematics of circuits. So I guess images, yeah, images are definitely possible and can be discovered with open knowledge maps. Integration into the library catalog. Yeah, I think that's very already have also a lot of very mature use cases that you can build upon. Creating theme-focused digital catalogs, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, I think it definitely helps to kind of show a certain area in a rather concise way. So I think you can have different knowledge maps representing different themes. Actually, this is also something that we're doing right now in the Encore project, because the researchers there have created kind of hierarchies of hypotheses. But in the project, it also turned out that these hypotheses are then linked to research questions and also to overarching themes. So yeah, this is actually something that we work on, is kind of research theme-based maps. As a harvester to link digitized archival resources across repositories. Yeah, it's always been our ambition, of course, to bring different resources together and to make sure that we have a very broad overview. It's also always, of course, what our users are asking from us, right? They want the broadest possible knowledge base. maybe connecting related subjects, integration of Europeana metadata. Yeah, thanks. I think that would be indeed very interesting and something we could try. I think there is a great potential for that. Connecting different collections across institutions. I think that's similar to the other one, to link digitized archival resources. Yeah, and also of course for research. Yeah, that's often the main use case for open knowledge base. Well, thank you all so much for your input. This is really great. I'm going to switch back to the slideshow now. And I actually only have one more slide, which is thank you so much for your attention. And I'd be really interested in your comments, questions, and just to discuss any use cases that you have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Peter. And really useful to use that that app for handling feedback. We might steal that. I have a question to start us off. If people want to put questions in the chat, we also are a small group, so then can also just if you put your question in the chat, then we'll open it up for you to just ask yourself. Something that jumped out to me, how do you handle multilinguality issues with the platform? I feel like a lot of the examples I saw at some points were in English, and then I saw some in German. Is there anything that you use to be able to handle multiple languages at once?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always the kind of million-dollar question with multilingual resources, right? How can you link them together in a useful way? I think we made a little bit of way in the Triple project where there was a thesaurus for different languages, and you then had keywords sort of in any language, or the 10 languages that are supported right now. And it's really helped to bring resources together. What we're of course always trying to do is to work with the metadata that's already there. So if we have a little bit of translation, that often really helps. It's kind of where I think, you know, there is still a little separation of languages happening, but we can also see use cases where it works really well. So it's really a matter, I think, of more of experimentation and working together on these kind of use cases together with the partners that we have. But yeah, it's always a little bit of a game, because if you open it up for all languages, right, it will work better for some and worse for others. But for example, where we have a huge communities in Indonesia, and in Indonesian it just worked out of the box, which is something that we also didn't expect, and which was a really happy byproduct of just opening it up and sort of going in with this way.
Cool, thanks. Anyone else? Any other questions? Perhaps? No? Well, then I will ask one more just because I can. I was the one who asked about schematics in the poll that you sent out. And so for that, how would it work for kind of visual content in terms of creating these maps? Would it be another very similar process in terms of being able to find overlapping connections between images?
Yeah, so I mean, everything's based on metadata at the moment, right? So it really depends on the metadata that you send us, and not so much the underlying object. But of course, you can optimize, right? And this is, I think, where it gets fun and gets interesting. So for example, for data sets, we had to adapt the deduplication algorithm, because yeah, data sets, there you often have small variations, and it's still the same, or it's still a different data set and not the same data set, right? So for images, we already have like a denotion for images that shows you, you know, this is an image, but of course it's a visual thing in and itself. So why don't we display, for example, the image within the map? So I think this would be interesting things to explore in such a use case.
Understood. We have a question from Martin. What about Martin? Unmute yourself, ask your question.
Sure. Just building up on Greg's question. So if you have like good metadata for a video library, could you then use that metadata to build like maps of audiovisual content?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's definitely possible. And would also be a very cool use case, I think.
Yeah, that would open up totally new approaches to getting to know films and finding new films, also outside of academia, I think. You should go to Netflix and offer that.
Yeah, no, but I think, these are visual media, right? And putting them together with a visualization creates something entirely new. Yeah.
I might come back to you on that one.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. Well, with that, Peter, if there's no further questions, I'd like to thank you for your time and sharing your work with us. And bringing it to the attention of a lot of us. As you saw in the beginning, many weren't familiar with it. So I hope that more people are now familiar with it and will be reaching out.